Lift every voice and sing till earth and heaven ring, ring with the harmony of liberty. Let our rejoicing rise high as the glistening skies. Let it resound loud as the rolling sea. Sing a song full of the faith that the dark past has taught us. Sing a song full of the hope that the present has brought us. Facing a rising sun of a new day begun. Let us march on till victory is won. Let us march on till victory is won. Let us march on till victory.
It is my pleasure to welcome you all here today to the 4th annual Deveau DBDLI lecture. We gather today in Mi'kmaq, the ancestral and unceded territories of the Mi'kmaq people, governed by peace and friendship territories. We also honor the 400 years history of African Nova Scotian communities whose resilience and wisdom continue to inspire our work. A practical lens into the acknowledgement means moving beyond words, in meaningful engagement to support and to be advocates for Indigenous and African Nova Scotian communities. So here are some ways to do this. Commit to continuous learning and dialogue. Support Indigenous and African Nova Scotian initiatives. Engage in land resource stewardship. Challenge systemic barriers. And you can think of many others and many other ways to do so. Some of you are joining from around the world. I see Nigeria popped up earlier. We have South Africa, from the United States, and wherever you are joining us, I just want to welcome every one of you here. Today we have the privilege to host Dr. Rita Orji, a pioneer researcher in AI for social good, and Dr. George Sefa Dei, DBDLI's Extraordinary Fellow of Africentric Research, and a leading anti-racist scholar. Their insights on technology, Afrocentricity, community empowerment promises to be enlightening today. As we explore the intersection of Ubuntu, AI, and social justice throughout this lecture today, let's reflect on how we can harness innovation to uplift undeserved communities and promote equity. Within this year's theme for African Heritage Month, Legacy in Action, Celebrating Black Brilliance, we're called to reflect on and to take inspiration from change makers like our distinguished speakers to influence our collective work of future making for Black communities. Your engagement is crucial for the success of this lecture and for this moment. So please use the Q&A function on for your questions and the chat function to share comments. Thank you all for joining us for this important dialogue. I'm privileged to introduce our first distinguished speaker for today, Dr. Sefa Dei, who will share reflections on Ubuntu's role in educating by promoting inclusivity beyond and community-driven learning. And now, please allow me to welcome Dr. Sefa Dei to take the stage.
So thanks very much, and it's an honor to be asked to make some reflections on this important topic. And I know I have some few minutes for this, so I'm just going to be very quick on my comments. We have already recognized the land and also welcome the ancestors into the room. Molifi Asante's work, right, is very, very informative on when we talk about some of these issues. And one of the quotes that I find very, very useful is the idea that if colonialism's influence had been merely about the control of the land, that would have required only one form of resistance. But it's more, in fact, when knowledge is colonized. And this is why we need to think about new ways of coming to education, particularly for Black African learners in our school system. I think this is very, very important to be able to address some of the issues that we want to talk about. And this is why we need to deploy our ancestral wisdom traditions, the elders, and our identities, who we are as a people, to strengthen and sustain this search for new educational futurity. And in this connection, what is very, very important is for us to look at how we train our rootedness. We are rooted in a place, whether it's on the continent, whether it's in the diaspora, but we also have a dialectical relationship with each other and how we draw on that to think through. And I think the Ubuntu philosophy allows us to do that. I think as scholars, Black African scholars, we must define the challenges facing our communities and to think through creative solutions that are lodged in our cultural knowledges and wisdom traditions, what can be called Black African solidarities. And again, when you say Black African solidarities, what comes to mind is Ubuntu. In order to explore the ways our cultural knowledges that are versed, for example, in what I have called, and working with Paul J, the whole concept of elder crits and the interpolation with Ubuntu philosophy to promote Black education. Why is this important? I think we need to look at some of the current reckoning. The continuing crisis of Black African education globally, the question of miseducation, then the domestication of, even when people talk about we need to create inclusive spaces. Students are not centered. Their knowledges, their ancestral wisdom traditions are not centered in the learning process. And then what we see around now, particularly in North America, where there's this systemic assault on critical race theory, Black history, African studies, two-spirit, LGBTQI rights. And then, of course, the conservative attacks on the public school system, which particularly comes up fully in the North American context. So what I'm asking us to reflect as part of my reflections is to look at African elder crates. African elder crates are knowledges of our elders, right? And for us to be able to look at it, we have to ask some questions. One question, for example, is how do we as African learners begin to pioneer new analytical systems for understanding our communities in the West of Africa, steeped in our own homegrown cultural perspectives. Also, how do we draw on the nexus of Blackness and Africanness as revealed in African elder creeds and philosophies such as Ubuntu? Because African elder creeds, to me, have been the least analyzed for their contributions to schooling and education, return of storytelling, proverbs, folk tales, and so forth. But these knowledges also underpin democratic and social justice education, and they challenge the competitive, individualistic models of learning and success, which normally we see with our current school system. They also highlight collective interests, right? And they shape schooling away from the very, very unicentric to polycentric, multicentric education models that challenge the Eurocentric models of education and humanism that our students have to contend with in that. They also offer what I call epistemologies of decolonization, and they are metaphors of resistance. Because at the end of the day, decolonization cannot happen solely through Western science scholarship. We have to look at our own indigenous philosophies, our cultural wisdoms, traditions that are embedded in our philosophies to be able to deal with that. And this allows us to think about the grammar of educational maturity. So how do I interpret Ubuntu philosophy and African elder creed? I think we know Ubuntu as a Bantu term for humanity being served through others. So how we come to humanness through the relationalities. Now, as a philosophy of justice and fairness is grounded in this Ubuntu or these ideas of humanness, communitarianism, solidarity, and interdependence in the words of Tamale and others, right? Which are forms of coming to a co-learning, bringing humility to our learning, and also showing ethical relevance to how we engage our knowledges. One of the quotes that started this session was this idea, Desmond Tutu, we are human only through the humanity with and of others. And this is why we need to see how we produce knowledge in co-creating inclusive learning communities with ethical responsibilities to each other and to our diverse communities. So in conclusion, right, as part of my reflection, I want us to think about what schools do we want and are willing to fight for? What schools do we want and are willing to fight for? And that if we are going to engage in politics of refusal, that finds a place for our indigenous philosophies like Ubuntu and ancestral cultural wisdoms, then we must embark on a search for authenticity, which is guided by the ideals of dialectical relationalities to each other, but also responsibilities to each other. I believe that these are the Ubuntu teachings and this grounding in African elder creeds that we need to think about as we engage this dialogue. Because at the end of the day, mentorship is going to be critical. How we build communities, create communities, a way of mentorship with our different learners, and to begin to shift our thinking from the hierarchies to think in circles. And then we don't engage in these competitive ideas about who is a theory or who is theoretical, who is a deep thinker, and who is a surface level thinker. These are part of the competitive models of our academia that we need to survey. Then also the whole idea of land and ethic teachings, questions of relationality, sharing, reciprocity, connections, mutual interdependence, how we build relationships and we create schooling as community, where we have communities of learners, that we have responsibilities to each other. Our learning and our success are based on our relationalities and our responsibilities to each other. I think this is very, very important as we engage in these conversations. And in the words of Kiswahili, Asante Sana. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nana, for a great presentation. I've known Nana for the past 3 decades and have had the privilege of listening to his presentations on a number of occasions. and I've always learned something new. Thank you so much. I'm looking forward to discussions later on in the program. My name is Dr. George Frimpong. I'm the Director of Research at DBDLI, and it is an absolute honor and privilege to introduce today's keynote speaker, a trailblazer whose work exemplifies the very essence of some of the key theme for this year's Deveau Lecture, Legacy in Action, Ubuntu Education, and Black Brilliance in Innovation. At the heart of Ubuntu lies the belief that I am because we are. It is a philosophy shared, success and collective responsibility, values deeply embedded in the remarkable journey of our keynote speaker. She is a woman of vision, a scholar of impact, and change maker whose work embodies the intersection of technology, education, and social transformation. Dr. Rita Orji is a professor of computer science at Daye University, a Tier 2 Canada researcher in persuasive technology, and director of Persuasive Computing Lab. Her groundbreaking research focuses on human-computer interaction, persuasive technology, and AI-driven behavior change systems, fields where she has pioneered innovative ways to design technology that empowers individuals and communities. Her journey is a testament to the power of education and resilience. Born and raised in Nigeria, she rose from a humble background to become an internationally recognized leader in STEM. She earned her PhD in computer science from the University of Saskatchewan, followed by postdoctoral training at McGill University, the University of Waterloo, and Yale University. Along the way, she has shattered barriers, becoming one of the most cited Black female scholars in her field, and a role model for young researchers worldwide. So as we reflect on Ubuntu research and AI for social good, Dr. Orji's journey reminds us that legacy is not just about what we achieve individually, but about how we uplift others through our work. She's not just shaping the future of technology, she's shaping the future of communities by ensuring that technology serves humanity equitably. She exemplifies the principle that knowledge, when shared, becomes a tool for collective liberation and progress. So, ladies and gentlemen, it is with great honor that I welcome to the stage a true innovator, a champion of Ubuntu-inspired progress, and a leader whose legacy is in action every single day. So over to you, Dr. Rita Orji.
Okay. Hello? Okay, is my voice coming clear?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much, everyone, for coming around, and thank you, Dr. George, for that wonderful introduction. Good evening, or good afternoon, everyone, wherever you're joining from. Good evening and good morning, depending on where you're joining from. So today, I am excited to give this keynote presentation, which I have titled AI for Social Good, Empowering Black Brilliance. So in this keynote, I want to share with you some of the work me and my collaborators and students has been doing in the area of AI, human-centered AI. So do you remember that popular proverb, African proverb that says, until the lion tells his side of the story, the tale of the hunt will always glorify the hunter. In this talk, I will take you through our research journey towards developing AI conversational chatbots for educating low literate women from under-resourced community about maternal and infant healthcare. I will discuss how we engaged these brilliant women, Black women, of course, and empowered them to contribute their invaluable insight and lived experience in co-creating technological solutions for solving the problem of maternal and infant health. Okay, so as you already heard from the introduction, I am a Canada researcher, a professor and the director of Persuasive Computing Lab. And at the Persuasive Computing Lab, we develop technologies that help people to achieve various self-improvement goals, technologies that support people to achieve goals that are important to them and their community. So my research in this Persuasive Computing Lab can be seen or can be categorized into 4 different places. I work on personalization model. I also develop technologies for health and wellness. And I also work in the area of Internet of Behaviors. And then the 4th one, which is where I'm going to be talking about from, is developing technology for underserved population. I'm very, very more particular and passionate about this particular area. So as a word of introduction, the field of artificial intelligence has evolved considerably in the last 60 years since it was first coined by a group of researchers in 1956. Where there are now many AI applications that are developed in high-income countries, AI used in resource-poor settings remains scarcely represented. So as I'll be talking about AI for social good, let's start with what is AI for social good. AI for social good aims to use and advance AI to address many societal issues and improve the well-being of the world. It embodies a lot of things, including responsible AI, societal impact of AI, common good of people, development and ethics. It also has to do with using diverse data sets, data transparency, better data, broader population, and the ethical implication of AI. So the increasing focus of researchers, companies, and governments in this area of AI for social good initiatives bring to mind these questions. The first question is, whose good is being served by AI for social good initiatives? Which public is being served? Who is deemed good enough to benefit from AI for social good initiatives? Let me give you an idea of who is being served by current AI for social good research and innovations. As part of this, our broad efforts in this area of designing AI intervention, we conducted a systematic review of 120 papers published in the last 10 years to understand the intricacies about this paper in the area of AI for emotion dictation. And we saw some interesting results. Let me start with the good news. There seems to be equal representation of males and females in the reviewed research overall. That's those that reported the demography. That's really good news and somewhat surprising. With respect to representation of people from various age groups, we can see that the bulk of the research concentrated and innovation concentrated on adults. That is people from between 18 to 60. And there are a few research focused on people above 60 and people less than 18 years old. With respect to language, English dominated the space. Most data sets used in research are in English language, and most people designed for English speakers. However, do you know that we have around 6,500 languages spoken in the world? And among them, English is the most popular anyway. However, it is closely followed by Magdalene, then Hindu, Spanish, and French. With respect to representation of different continents in AI research, as you see, most of the research came from the West. Africa is hardly represented. This raises a big question. So how well is the AI innovation generalizing to the underserved communities, such as people from developing African countries? Some of you may ask why AI innovation generalization is important. The big news is that even the underserved communities and people from low resource communities view AI as a silver bullet that will solve most of their problems, even when they are marginalized. And based on research on public perception of artificial intelligence in 8 different countries, including developed and developing countries, it was found that there are excitements about the usefulness of AI in general. However, there's also some concern. Importantly, people from developing countries, such as India and Nigeria, see AI as a futuristic technology, meaning that they are not yet experiencing its impact. In general, there's a widespread expectation that AI will change the world for good, having positive impact, and in many areas, including health. Privacy concern is a major issue re-echoed by people from all these countries. One interesting finding of the paper is that people from developing countries have more optimistic view, like people from Africa have more optimistic view of AI and its impact in the society compared to developed countries. So similarly, in one of our recent paper, which is currently under review, we found that we surveyed the opinion of people, the public, about AI in Africa based on social media shares. So we found some positives and negatives. People are very, very excited about AI, and they're hopeful that AI will help in driving innovation in Africa. They hope that AI will create opportunity for digital inclusivity, not marginalized. They also hope that AI will mitigate environmental sustainability issues and also help in preserving and promoting African cultures. On the other hand, people were concerned about accessibility and equity and losing cultural identity, and of course, privacy and ethical concerns. So what are social good problems among underserved populations which AI can help in address? According to recent review, here are the domains focused by most AI for social good research. Agriculture is one of them, health, education, environmental sustainability, among others. There are just many of them. So in this presentation, I will show you my research in particularly in the area of education in health for marginalized women. So to uncover issues faced by women with low literacy level and in underserved communities, these people live in under $1 a day, right? We performed a lot of rigorous studies, collaborating with community partners, doctors, nurses, over 3 months to uncover some of these issues faced by these women and answer this research question on how we can design AI technology that is culturally appropriate and reflect the value of these people. So why are we interested in maternal and infant health among these communities, among these marginalized communities in Nigeria. As you know that globally, child and maternal health have experienced approximately 50% reduction in mortality rate in the past 30 years, from 1990 to 2017, as can be seen in that figure. However, this great progress and improvements in reducing child and maternal mortality have not been equal across the globe. The risk of a woman dying as a result of pregnancy and childbirth during lifetime is approximately 1 out of every 180 women in developing countries, as compared to 1 out of approximately 5,000 in developed countries. People in underserved and low-resource communities are left behind in the improvements. So we set out to uncover possible reasons or factors contributing to high mortality rates and figure out how technology can be used to help these women. That is more like human-centered AI. For example, in Nigeria, as we already know, Nigeria is almost in a crisis state. The maternal and infant health mortality rate is over 900 deaths per 100,000 live births, as compared to like 12 deaths per 100,000 in developed countries. The infant mortality rate in Nigeria is 57 out of 1,000 births, and this is alarming and among the highest in the whole world. So in 2018, me and my team spent 3 months in the rural part of Nigeria, Eastern Nigeria, in the rural community in the Southeast, and we partnered with the locals and collaborated with various stakeholders, including gynecologists, pediatricians, midwives, nurses, pregnant women, and nursing mothers. We conducted a mixed method study on over 600 pregnant women and nursing mothers and visited the hospital. We also visited some of these women in their home, visited the childbirthing centers to interact with these women over the 3 months and see how the factors play around to actually influence their health and their decision and contribute to this high mortality and infant death. So here I present some of the key findings. We found that most of women in the rural African community are not literate. They have less than high school education. And death due to complications linked to late arrival to health facility or not coming to health facility is the major cause of infant and mortality and maternal mortality. We also uncovered that women have least agency in decision concerning their lives, their health, and that of their kids. Most times these are dominated by husband and the mother-in-law who superhead the decision. So these are some example quotes. I might not read all of them because of time. As can be seen in this sample comments above, for example, this is a comment from a husband to his wife, and I quote, "My mother delivered some of us in the farm and some at home and still went to farm the next day. It is your laziness that make you want to go to the hospital and waste money." This is what a husband told the wife. Similarly, this is another comment as said by a mother-in-law to a wife, to the son, and I quote, "I gave birth to your husband and all my children at home without the doctors or hospital in my time. Our kids turned out to be okay. A child that is destined to die, will still die, and the one that will live. So there's no need to go to hospital for regular checkups." We also found that only 28% of women are formally employed. This is a clear indication that women are financially dependent and have to comply with the decision of whosoever gives the money. As you already know, whosoever, as the saying there goes, he who pays the piper calls the tune. We found that majority of the women cannot read or write. They can only express themselves in their local language. This means that anything we want to develop has to be in this native language. Majority, that's approximately 92% of the women, own mobile phones, but none of them own a computer. And some of these mobile phones are not these advanced smartphones we're using. Some of them are low-end smartphones. Most of them are feature phones. We also found that most women reported not using contraceptives due to religious beliefs and pressure from husband, mother-in-laws. As a consequence of this, 30% reported dealing with unwanted pregnancies. This is particularly true for young and first-time mothers who are considered naive and ignorant, and therefore all of their decisions are made by others on their behalf. Some of the women also reported that husband and mother-in-law decided on when they should become pregnant. Women view C-section as a bad thing and will not use it, even if it is the last option, due to myths and misconception and cultural beliefs. Misinformation and myths about reproductive health and best practices are a major issue. There's also misinformation and myths about immunization for their kids, use of contraceptives, C-section, delivering in the hospital versus delivering at home. The findings are supported by some of these comments. I will not read through all of them, but let me go through the first one. This is my 7th pregnancy. I've delivered 6 children at home with the help of traditional birth attendants, but 5 of them died before their first birthday. I don't know why they died. I came to antenatal to know if this one will live. I pray that God will help me with this pregnancy. This is from a mother. This is another related comment, but this one from a gynecologist. It says, and I quote, "We are talking about what we can do to help these people. We are talking about information. How do we get people to get the right information at the right place and at the right time and in the right language?" This is another extensive comment from a consultant pediatrician, highlighting the importance of providing mothers with adequate information. This comment is highlighting about a woman who actually stopped immunizing the kids because the first one they immunized had fever, and they didn't know that fever is actually is expected for that kind of immunization. And because of that, the subsequent kid, they did not immunize them. So they're talking about the importance of information. And information is not about telling them the positive. It's about telling them the truthful information, the good, the bad, the consequences, right? If you tell them immunization is good, tell them about the possible side effects and that it is normal and what they should expect. In that way, they don't freak out and panic when something comes up. So we also found that ignorance, culture, religion impact maternal and infant health. As can be seen from this comment from a consultant gynecologist, and it says, there was a woman, she was coming for antenatal. We canceled her for C-section, only for her to go to somewhere else. Went into labor, the uterus ruptured. She lost the baby. She nearly died too. She was eventually brought to the hospital unconscious. Of course, we performed the surgery. Of course, the uterus was ruptured. We removed it. I don't know whether you got the information, what I am saying. So, you know, ignorance and religion have something in common. So there are a lot of sample comments like that, highlighting a lot of things that myths, ignorance, and misinformation, how they contribute to maternal and infant health crisis in this region. So based on that, here are some list of challenges we can develop AI application to help us solve. It can tackle some of the myths that these women are already experiencing, misinformation that is circulating among them. Nobody is getting the right information, coupled with culture and every other thing. So these are the important information. Most women in this low resource community use low-end phones, feature phones, or low-end smartphone. Most women can only communicate in local dialects and may not be able to read or write. Cost and accessibility to healthcare facilities are a major issues. The distance and the waiting time is unimaginable. And whatever intervention we want to come up with, it has to be culturally appropriate. So how can we design an AI-driven digital intervention for maternal and infant health? We set out some requirements that must be met for this intervention to work for these people. And this includes the intervention or the technology we have to develop have to be able to work effectively in low-end smartphones or feature phones. The chatbot must accept voice input and voice output. Remember, most of these women cannot read or write. A multimodal user interface is preferred, that it can take voice and also respond in voice. And I have to have high local language recognition accuracy. High accuracy of recognizing different accents, because some of them speak the same language, but just like every other language, or using different accents. And it must be culturally relevant, very important. So we adopted the progressive action research, which evolved through 5 stages: the identification of the problem of interest, collecting and reviewing relevant data, iteratively designing and implementing the chatbot, analyzing user feedback, then we repeat the action until the result is achieved. So in the phase 1 of the AI chatbot design, we conducted a participatory design of 2-way voice-enabled conversational chatbot prototype with speech-to-text and text-to-speech functionalities. Working with the pregnant women and nursing mothers in the under-resourced communities, we came up with 2 possible prototypes of AI-powered virtual assistant mobile app in the form of chatbot for pregnant women and nursing mothers. The first prototype looks like a chat messaging app, just like what you can see on the screen, but with a voice-enabled via speech-to-text and text-to-speech capability. As can be seen in this screen, the chat is in the local language, specifically the Igbo language. The second prototype of the AI-enabled chatbot is more like a virtual AI agent in the form of a health practitioner. The agent could hold conversations and advise mothers like they would in their doctor's office. Most women like this agent-based option because, they felt like it looks more natural. They like the 2 people conversing, and it will make it more engaging to them. So engaging the mothers in the design process and the design ideation gave them a sense of belonging and agency. They were excited to contribute in the solution for a problem that affected them all and felt really grateful to be engaged in this project. Their brilliance manifested. They gave us useful suggestions, including how to design the user interface and to improve usability. They also suggested that we make it possible to adapt the voice of the AI agent and the appearance, and many other things. You can't imagine what the kind of useful tips they gave to us. You wouldn't imagine it is possible for people who are not even tech-oriented. But not being tech-oriented was even an added advantage because it made them to think out of the box, right? So most time, like we said, the empowering brilliance means that we have to acknowledge that what makes one brilliance is not about education. It's not about ability to read or write. These people really, their brilliance is showed in a lot of ways during this study and design process, and we are really amazed at their ingenuity. So, to overcome the internet connectivity challenge and the fact that many of our target audience do not own smartphones, they use feature phones that can only do SMS and calls. We designed a fallback SMS implementation. So we designed an intervention alternative that works on a feature phone. So here you can activate information, get information about both childcare and maternal health by, for example, testing mother or child. So, for example, 1, 2, 3, and then it brings an option like the option in the board in the first screen. Asks you, is it pregnancy? You type a number. If it is baby care, you type 2. If it's pregnancy, you type 1. If it is emergency, you type 3. And based on their type, which can easily be done on feature phone, they get more other information, always responding with number, and get everything they need. So this is the kind of solution that works for people that actually do not have internet-enabled phone or feature or smartphones. I won't go into the detail. We don't have much time. We also developed an offline content delivery system using SD card for maternal health education. Remember, some of these people are in the village, they don't even have internet. Some of them use feature phone, there's no internet. So what other option we created is to pre-record some of these educational videos, interactive physics, visual guide in their SD, that's a phone SIM card, and they can slot it in and watch it and then participate in the quizzes after they've watched it. An alternative approach is what we call community video club for maternal and infant health education. Remember the power of togetherness. Ubuntu, we are because you are. So coming together, provided opportunity for them, instead of watching in their phone, to go in the community center, partnering with the community center to actually play this video, and they communicate and answer the question interactively and have some discussion around it as a group, thereby breaking some of those cultural norms that tend to be societal or propagated in group. The phase 2 of the design, in the phase 2 of the design, we got the mothers to test the usability of this app, and they liking it. The application accepted both voice and text inputs. The third and the final step will be the full chatbot evaluation and deployment. We recognize that there is a long way to get to this final stage. There are a lot of challenges which must be overcome to realize the full implementation of this vision. Some of the technical challenges, including that the available chatbot framework do not support most local languages, including the one we are studying. There's no pre-trained language embedding. The evaluation of the language recognition accuracy of most AI models is usually done with popular languages. The low resource languages are usually ignored. No readily available language translation support. No training data have been created. So we're actually curating the data using both this native language and the accent to train AI model from the scratch to be able to embed it and use it to build these chatbots that work for these people in their setting. There's also a lot of challenges in the data collection, the underserved community. It is very hard. First of all, you need to win their trust. You need to bring yourself down to their level and stay in the same hierarchy. That is why it took us 3 months to be able to even collect the first data. Bringing language and bridging the language and cultural barrier. We integrated locals who not only speak the language, but speak it in their own accent, thereby increasing our acceptance rate. We engage them from the beginning. It's not really when the research is already done, you carry it and go there and say they should evaluate it, right? They were part of the co-design process, coming up with ideas on what they need. Thereby they feel a sense of belonging. They feel that those two coming out belongs to them. And you want to avoid being judgmental, right? When they tell you some of the things they do, you don't really feel like, oh, they are doing something atrocity. I mean, you don't want to be judgmental. So there's a lot of them which we try to navigate, but yeah. Some of these findings have been published and you can find them here. Because of time, I'll be rounding up. I want to conclude by summarizing the key takeaway from working on various projects targeting on designing human-centered AI intervention for promoting social good among underserved communities, and the opportunities for AI researchers to advance research in this area. Most of the AI innovation is developed and validated in the West and may not perform as well in underserved communities. As you already see, our people we worked with in this project do not have this high-end smartphone. So we need to come up with a solution that works for them. And without consciously including the underserved population in AI research and innovation, we are promoting inequality and marginalization. Underserved communities, women in these rural areas, under-resourced neighborhood, they have a lot of brilliance in them. We need to empower them to contribute in AI innovation. They are not just waiting to be consumers. They have the capacity to contribute ideas, both in the design and everything, more than we can actually imagine. AI technology needs to be human-centered and reflect the people that they are developed for. Their values, both culture and other values, need to be respected while the innovation is going on. It's always easy to think that, oh, designing for them is doing them a favor. You don't need to capture their interests. It's a no. It needs to reflect and respect their cultural beliefs, their practices and everything. And that is why they need to be involved from the very beginning of the design. Again, we need lightweight AI models that are optimized to perform effectively in low-end age. If you're using if you're technical and read about generative AI and see the amount of power they consume to train the model and everything, this kind of models are not meant for this kind of population. So we need lightweight models that work on low-end age. That's the mobile. We also need a support for various local languages, not just the English and the big languages. Privacy is still a very big issue, and it is unfortunate that when the chips are down, most people in the low-resource communities are actually used as a guinea pig. Hopefully this don't happen in the AI era. Distributed AI architecture and differential privacy is very important while we navigate this AI space and trying to design intervention that help people. And we need AI models trained using culturally diverse data sets. Most of what we are seeing as generative AI like ChatGPT are trained with data curated in the West, capturing Western context. When you deploy them in Africa, they will not hold in most cases. For us to actually include Africa in the discussion, in the AI innovation, the data used in training the model needs to come from Africa so that it captures our context, our value system, need to be captured from the very beginning. And the AI model needs to be able to learn from limited data sets. So in my own way, I kind of say that for AI to be really intelligent, it should be able to understand various usage context, user context, technology context, and dynamically adapt to them. These are some of the publications. You can see them online. And most of many thanks to our collaborators from Africa, and many thanks to my students who actually have worked with me, and to various funding agencies who have graciously funded my lab to date. Thank you so much, and I will stop here. I know my time is gone, and I want to conclude by saying that without consciously including underserved population in AI research and innovation, we are promoting inequality and marginalization. Thank you, and I welcome your comments and questions.
I don't know, Rita, you want to unshare?
I'm not sure. It's
No, I mean, unshare your screen.
okay. Should I remove my screen?
No, unshare. So just
Okay.
exit, yeah, the PowerPoint. Okay.
That's
So we'll break now.
The Delmore Daye Learning Institute is focused on community engagement, working with youth. We also have the added value of providing published resources, and those are used in the public school system. And that process is really important because that's when voices are centered.
Here at DBDLI, all of our work is focused through community, through our youth workshops, through publishing, through research, even through holding this public space here for the community. Our research and youth department are dedicated to better understand the educational challenges that our Black learners face here in Nova Scotia. We meet those challenges through community engagement, resources, youth programming, and research projects. A great example of our community engagement is our annual African Nova Scotian History Challenges. Students from across the province submit projects focused on African Nova Scotian leaders, activists, and communities.
The real niche piece for us is participatory action research. We are about community voice, and setting ways for it to be heard and to have impact. The Delmore Daye Learning Institute is named after a well-known, well-respected African Nova Scotian community leader, Mr. Delmore Daye. He would like to be known for his commitment to youth and youth leadership and his participation in the community as a community leader, advocate, and activist. The approach that Mr. Daye took, centering community voice and being participatory, present in the community, is what we try to model here through the Institute. And we're honored that we can carry his name forward.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome back from the break. I am Dr. Susie Brigham. I'm a professor in the Faculty of Education at Mount St. Vincent University and the vice chair of the Delmore Daye Learning Institute.
And I am Kofi Isiebidolu. I graduated from the Mount St. Vincent University with a master's degree in education, and I'm a Ghanaian. I'm here as a co-facilitator. Thank you.
Wonderful. So thank you again to our two speakers. Very much appreciated what you have offered for us. Thank you, Dr. Daye, for your suggestions and insights that you have found value in, including, for example, Ubuntu teachings, the importance of elder crit, and also earthly and land teachings. And thank you again to Dr. Orji for providing very original insights into the research that you have been doing, you and your students and colleagues, around AI for social good, and the examples that you have provided from the Nigerian context on infant and maternal health, and the problems that mothers and children face due to several examples that you gave, for example, myths and misinformation, lack of women's agency, literacy, and access to healthcare facilities and information. I wanted to start off with a quick question, and I wanted to also encourage the audience to pose their questions on the Q&A board. So it's open and it's ready for you to type in your questions. So please feel free to do that. And we're keeping an eye on those questions. So please keep them coming. And I wanted to ask a couple of quick questions that could maybe connect Dr. Daye and Dr. Orji's presentation. One of the things that I saw that Dr. Orji had mentioned is when she was looking at the research, that there's not a lot of research done related to the age group of 60 and over. And I think you found maybe one paper of that age group. And I was thinking Dr. Daye has been talking about the importance of elders and elders' input, elders' knowledge. And I wondered if either or both of you could comment on that, the lack of research that we have so far on older people or elders' involvement in AI, and yet the necessity and the criticality of involving elders in, as George Daye has been talking about in his research, an elder crit. So I'll stop with that question and I'll pass it over to maybe Dr. Daye, and then we'll go to Dr. Orji. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm finding difficulty hearing because of maybe the distance. But I think your question is speaking to the absence of research on elders, particularly in the area of AI, if I'm right.
Yes, that's correct. And
right. Yeah.
That
I'm not an expert on AI, so I would comment on the necessity and importance of this research that focuses on elders. I think one of the things has to do with the whole issue of intergenerational passing of knowledge. And I think given what is happening when I talk about the importance of our ancestral wisdom traditions, right, and what they offer the contemporary learner, I think there's the agency of also focusing on this group of population, right, in other words, to get a sense about how they see education, what they see as some of the strategies to deal with some of the problems that we confront with today in the school system. And I think, to me, we all in favor of research, for example, that focuses in that area. Because the whole idea of elder crates is that elders have a body of knowledge that need to be shared, that can be used to provide learning for the contemporary bodies in the school system, right? We also have elder crates in the sense of how they allow us to deal with some of the pressures that educators in the school system are dealing with today, when it comes to issues about how do you create a community, a sense of community? How do you build on learners' sense of self-confidence? How do you build on learners' understanding of what it means to be Black, to be African, to be a learner in the school system? And I think elders do have a body of knowledge that can be tapped into and in many ways picked on by educators to enhance their strategies and options of educating the learners of today. So I'll just leave it at that. Maybe Rita can just get into the AI component of it.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Daye. I totally agree on the importance of getting that intergenerational knowledge from the elders and passing it along. So what I would say to that is that I think one of the reasons why we see the low representation of elderly people in their research is because, think about it, who are the people who do research? Majority are young people, right? So we have this saying that if you tell me to design, people tend to design come up with what looks like them, right? And most times we see that interacting with people that are different from you or think differently as a burden. I mean, my grandparents lived long and I love talking to them. So most times they don't see things the way I see it, but I appreciate that deep knowledge they bring into things. To give you an example, I have an uncle. So one day I traveled to his place and I was doing one coding challenge. It was really a tough time. So I had to stay up all night trying to figure it out. And he woke up and said, "Hey, you're still up?" I said, "Yeah, I'm having issues trying to fix this." I asked me, he's not literate. So he asked me what I'm doing. So I tried to explain in a very layman language. And then he said one thing: maybe you should consider doing it this way. Remember, he doesn't understand what is programming or coding, something. And I said, okay. When he left, I was thinking about that. He said, it's not like what he said is I can just go in and he said, implement it this way. No. But what he said led me to figuring out the solution to what I'm saying, what I've been up all night doing, right? This is not because he had an experience in coding. It is because he has a lifetime of knowledge in different areas that when scaffolded, when unboxed, can be applied in different places. You understand what I mean? So that's actually the importance of involving elders, even in the conversation. They might not be born in the technology era, right? They might not have a lot to say about technology, but they have a lot of contextual knowledge about other things that when brought into the technology sphere, AI sphere, we change the dynamics of the conversation. We improve the discussion. The problem is that we don't have that patience. Right? We want the people that you ask questions, they give you the exact answer you're looking for. You know, the answer I'm looking for is the answer that looks young, like me. You understand what I mean? That makes sense, immediate sense, like us, what making sense means in our generation. We don't really want somebody that talks something that looks abstract or that looks like it doesn't necessarily have a direct application. But if you have that passion to listen, and I mean, one of my postdocs at McGill, I work with elderly people in designing. So we're trying to design a communication tool for them. They like to preserve the natural handwriting in terms of when they want to send letter. They love that they know, oh, when brother B send them letter, they already know brother B's handwriting. So that is a memory on its own. So they don't really like these digital tools that when they type on it, everybody type the same thing. There's no originality, there's no personalization to it. That personal touch, right? So we're trying to come up with a digital tool that again, that fastness of sending something digitally, but at least preserve that personal touch for them, and then engage them in that design space. And the designs they came up with was amazing. These are elderly people, 65, 60 and above. It was amazing. It's not something that a young person could think about, because I have only lived one life that is as old as I am. And my life has all been characterized by modernity, what modern days offer. So eventually, that design was really, really so unique in itself that it wouldn't take a young person to come up with that. It cannot, because you cannot think that way. Mm-hmm. And I appreciated that a lot. So I really totally agree that involving them in the conversation in this innovation is very important. And it's so much in line with the human-centered design, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. When all voices are not allowed, then we are already creating that marginalization we're talking about. It's not just about black and white. It's not about West and East. It's not about developed and underdeveloped. It's about the various communities, various groups that need to be engaged so that the conversation become richer, so that the design become richer. So that's what I would say, that it's very important that they're engaged in designing the solution, and also very important that they're also engaged in implementing solutions that solve their own problem.
Thank you so much to both of you for your responses.
Okay, thank you very much. Dr. Orji, there's a question for you. This person says, thank you, Dr. Orji, for sharing about the work you do. It is indeed groundbreaking. My question is about being non-judgmental, which is promoted. However, how do one balance this when the people are doing something that is harmful? Example, the husband that promotes about birthing at home or in the farm. How can health professionals keep a balance between giving appropriate health information while respecting the wishes and culture of the patients?
Yeah. Actually, being judgmental from my own context actually does not mean surrendering to their own wrong ideology or the misinformation or the myths. It's in my understanding, it means showing some empathy, putting yourself in their shoe. Anybody, like, we are different because of the context, the environment we grew up with. If we put you in the environment these people are, you might exactly behave like them. So trying to find a reason, try to listen. I find that when you try to understand people, try to understand why they do what they do, empathize with them, but at the same time, come out and try to explain to them why it shouldn't continue, why it is harmful, right? It's not about not telling them the truth. You're going to tell them the truth, but it's not about telling them the truth in a way that feels and criticize what they are doing outrightly without actually understanding there was a reason why they're actually doing it this way. So that's what I mean. You can balance it as a health professional. I've seen a lot of people that actually would listen to people, what they do, why they're doing it and stuff like that. And with some knowledge and education and the experience you have had, you begin to give them facts and figures on why what they have done is not the right way to do it and why it has to change, right? Judgmentality would feel like you are just condemning them outrightly. It has to stop this without actually trying to understand from their own perspective, and then coming in and empathetically kind of tell them, okay, this is why it is happening. So it's not about not saying the truth. It's about saying the truth, but saying it the right way. So that's how I see it. So I think health professionals can definitely do the right thing. Tell them, no, this is not the way it is done. It's a myth. It's not real. It is misinformation. But don't condemn them because of the way they've been doing it. Hear them out. People tend to really change a lot when they feel like, okay, you understand them. Because when you don't understand me, you're not even ready to listen. You just condemned what I did. You don't even know why I did it. People tend to be more resistant to change when one becomes combative.
Yeah, and if I can add something to it, I think you're right, Rita. And I think this is, look, there's no doubt that when it comes to whether it's health, education, culture plays a very, very important role, right? The question is how we take culture, right, and work with it. right? And culture is not immune to any interrogation or critique, right? I think people should be able to call out when they see some things that are very oppressive or some things that are very harmful to people. It's a question of how you do it in a way that respects the knowledge that people bring. Because one of the things we have to deal with, particularly when you talk about some of these areas, right, is the discarding of local knowledges, right? And that discarding, right, takes the shape of where people are seen as, quote, anti-intellectual, that they have no sense of understanding what is happening to them. I think you start by asking people what they understand and then work from there, right? And filling the gaps, but also validating and legitimizing what they know, while you also point out to some of the shortcomings in what they know, right? When you approach it from the point that you all know, you know it all, and that they are basically people who don't know, it creates a problem, and people become very, very resistant to any change that we want to bring into the system. And I think it ties in with the point that you're also making, which is that it's a question of two things. One is how you make these things human-centered. Making something human-centered is valuing, legitimizing, and validating what people know. But there's also the African-centered component of it, that yes, people also have a body of knowledge from where they are located. And how do you make that knowledge African-centered so that they're able to identify with it, they're able to relate to what is being discussed, and therefore have a sense of ownership of whatever it is that we're talking about.
Definitely, definitely.
Yes, thank you so much. I'll read another question that's on the Q&A board. This person said, my apologies if this was already covered, I came in late. I would like to know if the data and the processing happens locally on the user's devices, and how issues like latency and intermittent connectivity were mitigated. So that's a question for Rita, Dr. Rita.
Yeah, that's why I talked about, that's a word I use for it, low lightweight model. So usually in this kind of population, even when they have smartphone, these are the low-end smartphone that cannot even run models. So the processing and analysis don't happen at the edge. Sorry, I'm using technical. Doesn't happen at the mobile itself. So the mobile is always mostly all just for informational purposes, because they can't handle heavy computational things. So the lightweight I talked about has to do with making something optimizing it to be computationally efficient. It doesn't consume a lot of resources. It's not even only that they don't have a lot of internet. The space in their mobile phone is also limited, and data, internet, the data cost and the electricity. When people charge their phone, you want your phone to stay as long as possible, because you don't know when the electricity will come back next, right? So if the model is running in the phone, it means that it will consume a lot of electricity, a lot of data, and people will immediately uninstall that application. So we don't do a lot of computational stuff on the phone. It is run either in the middleware or in the server. And then the phone becomes for passing the lightweight information.
Excellent. Thank you for clarifying the lightweight model.
Okay, yeah, someone asked a question on that. Okay, Dr. Orji, we have another question here. This one says, I would love to know about the lightweight AI models.
Yeah. Okay, lightweight AI model, that's what I'm hoping that we get to. I think generative AI is driving close to that right now. When I say lightweight, it means they are optimized to be computationally efficient, consume less resources, and cost effective. So when you think about cost of computational cost, it's a lot of aspects to it. It means the amount of power they consume, right? Amount of resources. Think about power, think about internet, think about energy, right? How much do they run your battery down? How much internet do they need and stuff like that? These are some of these resources that they consume. So the lightweight means when the model is so optimized that it consumes less resources. And as I said, when you think about resources, think about energy, power, internet, and all these things. And then even some of these big models like generative AI, the number of water even used to clean this machine, it's also part of the resources. So when you optimize this model to consume less resources, we're talking about, that's what lightweight means, right? We haven't arrived there yet, but that is what we are advocating for advancement of work in this area so that it is easier to implement AI applications for under-resourced communities who actually most times don't use advanced equipment, even when that can handle heavy models, right? And most cases, like I have said in the previous question, what we do is when you train, you make sure that the server handle most of those computational intensive job. And then, for example, if I need to update, if I need to pull out their interaction, when they watch the videos, right, they answer questions, right? As opposed to pulling it out, doing a lot of fetch and call into their phone, making a lot of call into their phone. For example, every 5 minutes, I could send a call into their phone. The phone could be interacting with the server, front and back, getting data and sending data to the server. That increases the computational intensity, the resources that is consumed. It runs down the battery, it drains the internet and everything. As opposed to doing that, I could, for example, when they're taking those quizzes, instead of sending it to the server straight, I catch it, right? Maybe in the night or sometime when the phone usage is low or the phone is plugged, I can now carry all those data and transfer it to my server. In that way, I don't do a lot of interaction between server and the phone. That is actually one of the major cause of the resources consumed. So that is one of the tricks that can be done, that is done in this area to make sure that you don't drain their tiny phone that they are using. So that's one example of optimizing. That's one example of a way of making something lightweight. It's not necessarily lightweight model, but it's one of the ways of optimizing the computational resources consumed.
Thank you so much. I have a question that's tagging on to the previous discussion that we had about elder representation and the gaps in research. And this person is thinking about the mother-in-law group, which is an influential group in harming pregnant women and women of childbearing age in general in rural areas. And the question is there a way that these mothers-in-law can be engaged in another aspect of the study to support the mental health and well-being of young women in their families and communities as well? And the person is also wondering if the same could be said about men.
Yes, actually, that's actually a very nice question. And that's our immediate next research, is designing something. It's actually in line with African culture, because Africa, most times, decisions don't happen as an individual. It takes community most times. So we're thinking about designing for group. More like this study we did that involved close to 700 mothers and pregnant women and their doctors and stuff like that. So in the next one, we want to include the husbands. We want to include the mother-in-laws and everybody that provide support to the pregnant women and their infants, right? So by doing this, it's a community-oriented research. So we want to cover that. We want to create an opportunity for dialogue and co-create an application or an intervention that they can use together. So think about our AI tool, as opposed to just the woman using it, the husband also has it. The mother-in-law probably has access to it, and they can together probably watch a video and together discuss about it and respond to the question. So by so doing, they are learning together. It's not like the woman learns and tries to explain to the husband, and the husband says, go and sit down, or the mother-in-law says, who are you to teach me? You understand what I mean? So engaging them together is actually very, very important and key. And that's our next research, is trying to engage all the stakeholders.
Thank you so much.
The family. Thank you.
Dr. Daye, we have a question for you here. It says, in your presentation, you emphasized the importance of Africentric knowledge production as a tool for educational and social transformation? How can institutions actively integrate Africentric frameworks beyond curriculum changes to influence policy, governance, and community engagements in meaningful ways?
Yeah, that's I think first of all, I mean the question is alludes to the problem, right? And the problem is twofold. One is the way I think certain bodies of knowledge are normally devalued in our educational systems, right? And then the other problem has to do with how people who don't even bother to read what new paradigms are about, but they seem to know it all, right? And you see them sometimes running their mouth, and that's where we run into problems, right? There's no doubt that I think one of the things we have to do, there's a lack of knowledge about what Afrocentric or Africentric means. If you don't have that knowledge, you're not going to be able to integrate it into the curriculum, into questions of policy, into questions of governance. And I think, so we need to pay some attention to understanding what Afrocentricity means, right? And this is where the notion about centering not just bodies, but centering cultures and experiences are become very, very important. Because at the end of the day, right, it's a call for a paradigm shift. That's what Afrocentricity is about. It's a call for paradigm shift. And that means we center bodies, and bodies are able to come into the conversation from where they are at, where they are centered, where they are located. So when you look at the curriculum, there's no way you can talk about curriculum transformation and curriculum reform that takes into account other bodies of knowledge until people understand the importance of cultures, the importance of histories, and the importance of identity. And so to me, when it comes to the question of the curriculum, we need to pay particular attention to how we center the learners in the school system, how we see the curriculum itself as power saturated. Who are those who are constructing the curriculum? What bodies of knowledge do they work with? Where are they coming from? These questions need to be addressed in order for us to be very conversant with the change that we want. Even when you look at governance, right? Schooling is also about governance. Where do we see the role, for example, of local communities in school governance? What does it mean to bring local communities into school governance? So that, for example, parents don't come to school simply to be seen as bake and sale, or they are only called to come into the school when there's a problem. But they are seen as knowledge creators. They are seen as people who have knowledge, and therefore their knowledge is being sought. And then we validate, we acknowledge, and we legitimize these bodies of knowledge. And so that becomes also very, very important. When you look at policy, right? If you're having a policy that is to bring change, we also have to ask, who is the policy for? How are these bodies part of the policy-making process so that they're able to identify the policy, own the policy, and ensure that the policy is implemented? And this is why the ideas of Afrocentricity and Africentricity, that calls for centeredness, that calls for accountability, that calls for transparency, become very, very important if you are going to be very, very serious about transforming our school system, right? It's a paradigm shift, but it's a paradigm shift that comes to the body of knowledge that one needs to understand what it is and how you engage it in order to bring the transformation that we want into the system.
Thank you so much.
I have a question for Dr. Orji. This is, have you thought or are you currently thinking of expanding your research in other African countries and beyond? And if so, what adaptations are you working on or willing to work on?
Yeah, definitely. Nigeria, it's more like, that's where I'm from, apparently. It's more like where I feel like I can easily start off. But yeah, extending it to other African countries is really a very possible thing and something we're also looking at. We have a lot of collaborators across African countries. One of the key things in doing this kind of research is not somebody in Canada just running to, for example, Ghana to go and just do data collection. You need to involve the locals, right? So I think we already have that platform established by having collaborators from other African countries who are also actually interested in this kind of thing So to make it happen, it's more like working with those collaborators and to get relevant organizations. We need to get the health facilities. We need to have access to the women, like the one we did. I'm from Nigeria, but I might not be able to speak the kind of language these people speak there because this is a very different dialect. And having someone from that region that speaks like them was a very huge factor for us. So if I was gonna, or when we're gonna do it in other African country, that is also something we have to do, is to find the locals who actually would help us integrate with these people, speak their language, some people that know their culture. And it's not only that the people, the one or two people from the community know their culture, all of us somehow want to put ourselves in their shoes during the research. We don't want to look like we flew in from the moon to come and rescue people from somewhere else. All of us, we have to also bring ourselves down to their level, try to learn one or two things about them, their way of life, and behave in a way that make us feel like an integral part of them. So it's not always, we've actually had it in mind for like in the past year, but it's not, this kind of research takes a lot of time, not on the research front, but on the planning front, because community-oriented research has oftentimes starts a year, even before the research itself starts. The major step is establishing relationship first. If you don't have that relationship, it doesn't matter how good you think your innovation is, it might not succeed. So establishing that relationship is actually going on in some countries right now, trying to interact with the people in an informal and formal ways that is not just research, but eventually, when we now come in with research, it will not look, we are not going to be like new. They already know us, they're free with us, and in that way, they are free to participate. So the short answer is yes. We are looking at getting into other African countries, and we're doing certain adjustments and preparations to make that happen, including partnering with locals, finding partner organizations, and also ourselves trying to establish relationships, the right relationships, before even getting to the research stage.
Thank you so much for your response.
Looking at the time, I think we should be wrapping up the moment for now. But before that, Dr. Daye, someone wants to know in what ways can the elders create framework be institutionalized within educational and community settings to ensure intergenerational knowledge transfer and the sustainability of Africentric ways of knowing?
Yeah, this is a very important question. I get asked that a lot, right? I think, I think other communities have done well at bringing elders into schools, right? So where I am in Canada, for example, the indigenous peoples, right? They have done a very good job at creating a place for elders in the school system. And I think that's what I wanted to do for African elders, right? And just say in the diaspora, even on the content itself. So the idea of elders in schools, bringing elders into schools, there are two components to it. One is the bodies themselves, having elders have a place in school. So they are like elders in residence, right? That is very, very important. Elders in residence become very, very important in that. Then the second is infusing the knowledge of elders into the making of the curriculum and questions of pedagogy. So here, when I talk of the infusion of the knowledge of elders, I'm talking about stories, fables, folk tales, riddles. Those are the folkloric productions, so using them. But I think the question of the bodies become very, very important. How we bring elders, because they're an embodiment of our ancient wisdom traditions. And that's why we need to have a place for them in the school system where they are respected and valued, and their presence is also protected. Because there's the issue of elder vulnerability, which I think even Rita alluded to earlier, right? That I think there's this tendency where sometimes people think, oh, elders' time have passed, right? We are so-called in a phase of modernity, and therefore elders have nothing to contribute. I think we need to change that mindset, which is that there's something like past, that the present itself is constitutive of what it is not, which is the past, just as we're living the future now. So it means we do acknowledge the role that elders can play in the education of our children. So elders in residence become one way bringing the bodies of knowledge that elders have, which are contained in the proverbs, the fables and folk tales, right, into that. And I think one way we can also do this is where I think we maintain a database of the elders in our communities. And you know, when we talk about elders, we're not just talking about age. Elders also have to be seen in the way we venerate people who have made a contribution to the community, that they do care for the community. They have a sense of showing their responsibility, and that it's worth emulating. So you can see somebody who's not necessarily defined by age, but by their contributions, and they're seen as elders, and people value them and treasure them. And these are the people that I'm talking about, right? And so maintaining a database so that their knowledge is not wasted just because they have left what they're doing, or people are saying, oh, their time has passed, right? And one of the ways to do this is when we talk about learning at the feet of elders. How do we ensure that our learners are able to learn at the feet of elders? We can't talk about Afrocentric ways of knowing without also having a central role for our elders, because they are the embodiment of that knowledge. So creating that a role for them becomes very important, whether in the curriculum, whether in the pedagogy, but also in terms of their physical presence and protecting them even when they come into these spaces. Because these spaces sometimes can be very hostile. They can be very volatile, right? And that even if we are talking about bringing elders in residence, right, that protection becomes key, and their welfare becomes key in that.
Thank you so much, Dr. Daye. I think there was a question, or there was a comment in the chat box. One of them was, I think, not being able to hear the question from maybe Kofi and I. So I'm going to get close to the microphone and just read the next question, which was, I would like to know, I'm fixated on how we can leverage technology in ways that are culturally appropriate for the limitations on the ground. And this, I think, is from someone who is a computer scientist from the continent.
Oh, okay. Could you say it again, please? I think I missed some part of it.
Yes, I'll lean into the microphone. The question was, I am fixated on how we can leverage technology in ways that are culturally appropriate for the limitations on the ground.
Oh, okay, awesome. I mean, there's just multiple ways, very, very numerous ways that technology can actually help in addressing a lot of issues we face in the continent. What I have just presented is an example. Why I picked this particular example and missed over 100 and something projects we're doing in the lab is because I think it gives an example of how technology can actually be conceptualized to try to address some of these issues. In education, there's a lot of applications of AI in education. But I can't remember some of them. I know there's one called U-Lesson and stuff like that, who actually implemented it's a mobile application on some video and the USSD application like that actually try to teach people on their own on different subjects, physics and stuff like that. The good thing about it is that using the data about how people respond, they learn about the learners and adapt their learning materials or learning recommendation to that person. So this is an example of the use in the area of education. We're also working with the DBDLI on education-related AI intervention design. And we have a lot of other ones we're also doing in the lab. For example, we have AI technology in the area of agriculture. We want to see how we can actually help farmers to do more mechanized and informed farming, right? So for example, you can use AI, by the use of AI, you can be able to know the weather, predict the weather in a way that helps you to make decisions about your farm, about your crops, about your sales. You can link learners to potential buyers, eliminating the middlemen, land surveying and stuff like that. There's a lot of ways you can use it. It can be used in animal farming. We are working with some researchers from Bowen University in AI in poultry in peak management and other things. There's just a lot of ways. I know that one of my students, when I was a visiting professor in one of the Nigerian university, did something in the area of road accidents, prediction and management and stuff like that. So there's tons of ways technology can be employed to try to solve some of these problems we're having in the country. And even in the area of corruption and other related vices in the country, these are things that technology can do amazing things by eliminating those loopholes that create opportunity for people to do things they're not supposed to do. Right? That's actually what the West did. Nobody goes around here with money. Most of the things are digitized. Right? It's not like when you pay, you're giving it to anybody, you pay everything online. So there's a lot of things that technology can do to actually help us in addressing some of those issues we have in the country. And I cannot overemphasize that in designing them, they need to be culturally appropriate. That means they need to understand our psychology as people. Right. They need to understand our values. That is why we cannot say, let's adopt those ones that are working here and implement it. They will fail. Because our mindsets, our value system, there's also what we call the mental model. Mental model is the way we think we have constructed in our mind on how things should work, right? And this is a function of your interaction with other people, your interaction with your environment. Like, when I see this phone, the way I think it should work, the way I think this room should be designed, it's dependent on where I grew up, what I have interacted with over time. And this would be different for if I had grown up in North America only, right? So that's why it becomes a big mistake to say that, hey, this technology works here in the West. Let's just buy it and implement it in Africa. Most of them end up failing. 99% they fail. Because they didn't implement it, acknowledging our culture, our value as people, and what we know already, right? We start from known to unknown. So that's what I would say about that. It's possible, and that's what I would encourage young people, young researchers. Let's look at how we can solve our own problem by ourselves. The solution to African problem does not lie with a foreign messiah, a white messiah. It lies with Africans. We have the ingenuity to solve our own problems because we understand our people and we understand the environment. So nobody can design a better thing that will work for us than ours. And that's why I said when I started at the beginning, I said, until the lion learns to tell their own story, this story of the hunted will always be told to glorify the hunter. So unless we start taking ownership of this, looking forward to African young researchers jumping into AI, adapting this model, including generative AI, to our local context. I was so excited when I saw a young man, I think from UNILAG, who is now building African generative AI. It's not like building from the scratch. He took up the open source model and then retrained them using African aspects of the English language, curated from different sources, the videos and everything. I'm making it African. So when I speak Pidgin, it understands me because that's an that's a Nigerian language. And that's what I'm looking at young people. We have the capacity to get into this space and disrupt the innovation because we have the ingenuity and we know our people and we know our environment and we know the problem. So we can actually create solutions that work in our environment. I will stop there. Thank you.
Rita, actually, this important stage, I wanted to ask you, and I think, we were actually alluding to this question that I have. So what do you think we need to pay particular attention to in terms of the limitations or the drawbacks or the pitfalls of AI for, say, Africa, right?
The limitations for Africa, right?
Yeah.
That's a lot.
Mm-hmm.
In the current stage, like using generative AI, for example, there's a lot of hype about generative AI. I'm also super excited about its potential, but there's a lot of loopholes, right? The major one is that these generative AI are trained with Western knowledge, Western curated data. this data is not to be taken lightly, because it is data that capture the context of the people, the value of the people. So apparently, this model will recognize more accurately the values of those that their data was used to train it than Africa. So for these models to begin to work in Africa, we need to train it with our own data that imbibe our own value, our culture, and our context. If not, if you look at my initial slide, people were skeptical, were excited that AI can help us preserve our culture. However, they are also skeptical that AI can help disrupt our culture and our values. Why? Because if AI is trained with African culture and African-oriented data, that's the possibilities can preserve our culture. But if we're inducting AI that is trained with Western data, removing all, it's going to disrupt our culture. Because when you ask it something, it doesn't have the collectivism, it doesn't have this notion of elder respect, and it doesn't have it into it. So eventually, when a saying becomes popular, it becomes the norm. So when we continue using it without Western ideology embedded in it, gradually we begin to think that this is how we should be. Africa will eventually we'll eventually lose our own, because we are imbibing things that are trained with our own, and it's not going to work so well in African education as well. Because if we think about education in itself, different countries have their own values embedded in their education. It is not about what you learn. The examples and the structure and the national value is part of education. So when we are thinking about, I'm excited that we can invite generative AI to help students practice questions, practice skills, right? But I'm also a bit cautious that this generative AI does not have this holistic African concept of learning in it. So people are going to lose that. So we need, right now, Africa is not into the equation of this training. So, and it becomes a problem that the solution is going to be adopted by us when we are not at the training stage. So we should be in there. And beyond that too, there's also the ethics, there's the responsible AI aspect of it, there's the privacy, the ethical dilemma involved in it. So most times when, Africa, we don't have regulations yet. Most countries are, as a matter of urgency, bringing out AI regulations on what can be done and what cannot be done to keep those bad actors that might want to use it for their own benefit. Now AI has enormous power that it can assume whatever you give to it. People are already using it to scam people. To call you and somebody is calling you saying it's Rita, is using my voice. If you want, use my face as well and call you. These are possibilities, right? These are the bad actors. Then, unfortunately, almost everybody, but Africa is way behind. Almost every country is playing a catch-up game in AI regulation, but Africa is way behind. But the rate at which the technology is moving, if it is not regulated, it can get out of hand. People can use it to destroy a lot of things.
I agree. I agree. I agree, and I think it's the issue where sometimes people talk of, well, Africa is always doing a catch-up, right? But we also sometimes we need to pause, right, and reflect and see whether this is in our good interest. And I think when you point to the human dimensions, right, the human dimensions can sometimes be lost, right, in the process, right? And it's something that we can't lose sight of.
Sorry to interrupt you. It's a fantastic conversation and really good. This is brilliant what we're hearing from both of you. And I just wanted to say that there's some folks that still had some questions, and I wanted to let you know that we will try to get those answered after this is over. Just so you know, your question will not be lost. Some of you have put them in the chat box, so don't despair. We are now going to go to a wrap up. And I'm going to, I guess, turn it over to Sylvia Perez-Truman, because I'm not sure that Lily has time. Okay, sorry to interrupt you with this, but Lily Lynch is going to just say a few words.
Hi, everyone. My name is Lily. I was going to show us a couple of slides relating to our Africentric Learning and Youth Department, but I think I really just wanted to share one right now. So I'm going to share my screen and bring you into one of our engagements that deeply touches to what Dr. Daye was speaking to, and also Dr. Rita, around the power of engaging our elders and our community members in uplifting like our stories. So I'll back up one slide, but just a moment, I want to show you these beautifully brilliant faces, which represent winners from our African Nova Scotian History Challenges last year, and we aim to involve all students from P to 12 across Nova Scotia in an opportunity that's creative. There are some science projects, there are some music projects related to African Nova Scotian history. And so our initiative is in the 18th year now. We've seen, I want to say, up to 80,000 projects over 18 years. And so I'm going to go to the previous slide and share with you a quick video so you can see the celebration of recognizing the accomplishment of these young scholars as they dive into learning about themselves in the spirit of Sankofa.
By the way, is there supposed to be sound? Because we have no sound.
There was no sound. See, could you hear the video, or could you? It was only music, so that was a quick preview into how we celebrate our History Challenge winners and top classes and runners up, you could say. But this was an example of how we aim to look at the legacy of African Nova Scotian resilience and our connection as Pan-African community members across the diaspora, but specifically harnessing the knowledge and contributions of African Nova Scotians here on the ground. So the deadline for our projects is up tomorrow, February 28th, and we've received hundreds of projects every year. So we're getting ready for a full influx of in-person projects and online projects this year. So that's the end of my contribution for now. Thank you.
Fact that courage is expected of you in the face of the unbearable gives you strength for the rest of your life. This is a quote from Nelson Mandela. I want to acknowledge that aspect that came to me in terms of listening, how we need to kind of walk out and be present in a way that's most appropriate. My name is Sylvia Paris-Drummond, and I'm the CEO here at Delmore Daye Learning Institute. Thank you all for participating in the 4th annual DBDLI Deveau Lecture Series. This event has been truly enlightening, and we extend our deepest gratitude to our distinguished speakers, Dr. Rita Orji and Dr. George Sefa Dei, for their profound insights on AI for social good, Africentricity, and Ubuntu in education. Dr. Orji's exploration of AI-driven innovations to promote equity and empower underserved African populations has opened new horizons for our work
Dr. Daye's reflection on Ubuntu's role in education has reinforced the importance of inclusivity and collective wisdom in our educational approaches. We are immensely grateful to the Jeannine Deveau Education Equity Endowment Fund for their continued support, which makes this annual lecture series possible. Their commitment to advancing Africentric education and research is invaluable. And to note that they have often engaged with us, the folks representing that, in a way that allows us to amplify community voice and be directed by that. Special thanks to our event partners and especially invited gifts. And I want to say to the folks, quote unquote, behind the scenes work, that as I mention your names now, could you please come on video if possible, and or put your name in the chat as well. So for registration, Jochebed, IT support, Ryan, Philip, and Gift. Our team of planners, Kayanne Scott, Rufaro, our research assistant. And I've also, in terms of our DBDLI staff team members, could you come on as well now? If you have not been on already, or if you have been, do so. And again, pop your name in the chat so folks can recognize. I also want to acknowledge our moderators, Kofi and Susie, who you just had heard talk in terms of this event time. It's a very challenging space to try to move to a time frame, respond, make opportunity for questions and for comments. So thank you for leading that space. You are all appreciated, and thank you for resourcing this space with your energy and your engagement. As we conclude, let us carry forward the inspiring ideas shared today. Consider how we can apply these insights to create lasting impact in our communities, educational systems, and beyond. May the discussions we've had today inspire action and drive positive change in our pursuits of equity, innovation, and Afrocentric belonging. Thank you once again for your active participation. All you online and all you present here in this space. Have a wonderful evening. We look forward to seeing you at our future events. Asante sana.